Hey guys, Hades here. We're doing part two today of British English versus American English, or I think I titled it American English versus British English. Either way, we're going to do part two. Last time we looked at spelling of different words, we learned a little history of the dictionaries, and we looked at pronunciation and the difference, the letter Z or Z. A few things we looked at last time. This time we are mostly going to be looking at different words used for the same thing in American English and British English. So basically, I'm going to give you a sentence with the British word in it, and you'll have to guess the American word. We're going to see how many you can get. Okay, at the end, there's a couple other things, but this lesson is mostly looking at different words. All right. In the UK, you play football. In the US, you play what? In the US, you play soccer, right? The main reason for that is because Americans already have a game that they call football, right? Um, so the game Americans call football, most of the rest of the world might call American football, or maybe American rules football. Um, but the game most of the world calls football, Americans call soccer. Okay, in the UK, you drive on the motorway. In the US, you drive on the what? Okay, in the US, we might say highway or freeway, right? There's actually a difference between highway or freeway. They're both connect different cities. They're both usually interstates, meaning going between states, and they can be quite long. However, well, there's some in just inside the states too. However, usually on a freeway there are no stoplights, and on a highway there might be stop signs, stoplights, but they're still both long roads traveling between cities. All right. In the UK, you wear trainers on your feet. In the US, you wear what? In the US, you wear sneakers or tennis shoes. When I was a child, I called sneakers tennis shoes. I think basically my parents did that. Even if they're not designed for tennis, often we call them tennis shoes. Most of the US might say sneakers, though, right? For kind of informal shoes, maybe sports shoes, might refer to them as sneakers. All right. In the UK, you can carry a torch to see at night. In the US, you carry a. Okay, we would say flashlight in the US, right? A flashlight. Whereas they say maybe torch in the UK. Now, when this was invented, right? When this device was invented, the UK, they started calling it an electric torch, and eventually they dropped the electric and just started calling it a torch instead. Okay, in the US we say flashlight. All right, in the UK you eat biscuits. In the US you eat. Okay, we would say cookies was the most common answer, but also maybe crackers, right? Uh, in the US, cookies are going to be sweet, right? Crackers maybe not sweet, salty sometimes, but not sweet. We would distinguish between the two. Okay, in the UK, you take a lift. In the US, you take an. Elevator. We call it elevator in the US. They usually call it a lift in the UK. In the UK, you buy a return ticket. In the US, you buy a. Round trip ticket. Okay. There's a little bit different. Round trip means both ways. Return usually only means a way back, but we don't say return ticket, right? For example, I don't know, if you go to an American airline, you say, I want to go to this place. They might say, would you like a round trip ticket, meaning both ways? And in the UK, they might say, would you like a return ticket, meaning going back, because you're already buying the one going there. So they're a little bit different in meaning, but usually in the UK, they won't say round trip ticket. Usually in the US, they won't say return ticket. Okay, in the UK, you go to the cinema. In the US, you go to the what? Okay, we'll say movie theater or usually just the movies, right? Might just say I'm going to the movies. We use the word cinema in American English sometimes, but usually the place we go to, we don't call the cinema. All right, in the UK, you wear trousers. In the US, you wear what? Pants. In the US, we say pants. Now, I don't know how true this is. I read somewhere that actually pants is a British word, and then somehow during the Victorian era, where everything got kind of prudish in the UK, they stopped saying pants because it sounded like underpants, and they actually started saying trousers. So in the UK, they used to say pants, but now not so much. Now they say trousers, where in the US, we still say pants. Okay. In the UK, you go on a holiday. In the US, you go on vacation, right? We'll say we go on a vacation in the US. Now, we also use the word holiday in the US, but typically we won't say I'm going on a holiday, we'll say I'm going on a vacation. But a holiday can be a special day like a festival or, like Christmas or Halloween is a holiday, right? But when we take a trip somewhere, usually it's a vacation. All right. In the UK, you wait in a queue. In the US, you wait in a line, right? In the US, we might say we will wait in a line. Okay, in the UK, you put petrol in your car. In the US, you put what in your car? Gasoline, or sometimes gas for short. Now, I know there's some people who don't like that Americans use the word gas because it's not a gas, it's a liquid, right? We're putting a liquid in a car, so why would you call it a gas? Gas is just short for gasoline, what other countries might call petrol, right? In the US, we say gas or gasoline. Next question. In the UK, you drive a lorry. In the US, you drive a truck. We would say you drive a truck. And on a side note, for a couple years, I used to drive trucks around the U.S. Also, when I was in the Army, I drove them in around Germany a little bit. Not the trucks in the Army were not as big as the trucks I drove commercially in the U.S. Okay, in the UK, the third season is autumn. In the US, the third season is fall. Often in the US, we'll say fall instead of autumn. However, this isn't a very strict thing. There are uh, some Americans who say autumn. I knew in the past one of my teachers, and she was not from the UK. She would say autumn when I was a kid, and I met a couple other people in the US who would also say autumn. but I think most Americans would say fall. And I've only ever heard British people say autumn, so I don't know if they would use fall or not. But most Americans would say fall. All right, in the UK, you wear a jumper. In the US, you wear a. Okay, in the US, we would say sweater or sweatshirt. There's actually a difference usually, right? A sweater would be more formal, and a sweatshirt might be the picture there, right? Maybe more for relaxing or doing sports or doing something athletic is a sweatshirt. Okay, in the UK, you eat sweets. In the US, you eat what? In the US, we'd say candy. We do have the word sweets, but often it represents anything that tastes sweet, right? So if someone says you want sweets in the US, they might mean you want cookies, cake, ice cream, candy, anything that's sweet. Okay, in the UK, you live in a flat. In the US, you live in an. Apartment, right? We say apartment in the US, and I think flat is really more of a slang word in the UK. In the UK, you live with a flatmate. In the US, you live with a. In the US, we say roommate, right? And you don't have to live in the same room, although you can, right? Maybe if you're not making a lot of money, people might also share a bedroom. But usually in the U.S., your roommate you'll maybe share the same apartment or house, but you'll have different rooms. But we still refer to them as roommates. The next two confuse people sometimes because of the word chips are used in both languages, but they mean something different. All right, let's look at these. In the UK, you eat chips. In the US, you eat what? We say fries or French fries, right? So UK, those are chips. US, those are fries. Although often chips are maybe a little thicker, uh, but they'll still call the stuff they get at McDonald's chips. Okay, here's where it gets confusing for some students. In the UK, you eat crisps. In the US, you eat. Chips, right? So that confuses people. We both eat chips, but we call them different things, right? So that right there is what Americans would call chips, maybe potato chips, and British people would call crisps. Whereas when it's hot, right, and it's cut in slices like you get at McDonald's, then British people would say chips and Americans would say fries. So that confuses some people because we both use chips but for different things. All right, in the UK, you throw away rubbish. In the US, you throw away. We would say trash or garbage, right? Trash or garbage. In the UK, you throw rubbish in the dustbin. In the US, you throw garbage in the. We say trash can or garbage can, right? Where you put your trash or rubbish. In the US, you say trash can or sometimes garbage can. In the UK, the back of the car used for storage or carrying things is called the boot. In the US, it is called the what? The trunk. In the US, we call it the trunk, right? where you might put stuff, carry things. In the U.S., we call it a trunk. UK, they call it the boot. In the UK, the front of the car that covers the engine is called the bonnet. In the US, it's called the what? The hood. In the US, we might call that the hood, right? That part that you lift up underneath is the engine, right? The UK, they'll call it bonnet. The US will call it the hood. In the UK, you take the underground. In the US, you take the subway, right? In the US, we'd say subway. Now, there's lots of different things to call that, right? For example, there might be slang words for it too, like tube, uh, and and in California we have one, although it doesn't go underground in the LA area anyhow. And I shouldn't say we because I don't live there anymore, nor probably will I again. But they might call it like the Metrolink. I know in mainland Europe, they just call it the metro, and it's not always underground. Sometimes it is. So it's got lots of different names. And in London, I want to say they call it the tube, but I don't remember if that's correct. But there's also different cities in the U.S. where they might have a different nickname for it. But typically in the UK, it's underground. In the U.S., it's subway. But that can change a lot depending on where you are. In the UK, you use a rubber to remove your mistakes. In the US, you use an eraser, right? We call those erasers on the end of a pencil because they erase mistakes. But, they're kind of made out of a rubber material, so that's why in the UK they might call them that. In the UK, babies wear a nappy. In the US, babies wear a diaper, right? There's a picture right there of a diaper. What babies wear, so they don't make a mess, right? All right, next one. In the UK, you use a mobile phone. In the US, you use a cell phone, right? In the and for short, we might say cell. In the UK, for short, they might say mobile. Uh, But actually, cell is short for cellular phone. We call it a cellular phone, but it's been shortened to cell phone. Sometimes people just say cell. All right. In the UK, you get water from the tap. In the US, you get water from the what? Faucet. Although on I know some Americans that say tap. Not everyone says faucet. I don't know about the UK. But yeah, usually we'll say faucet, but some people might also say tap. In the UK, you walk on the pavement. In the US, you walk on the sidewalk. Okay, so in the UK, they might say pavement. In the US, we might say sidewalk, although on occasion, I have heard someone say pavement. But pavement could also just mean anywhere that there's concrete in the U.S., right? Maybe asphalt too, what the roads are made out of, but might call that the pavement. All right. In the UK, you eat maize. In the U.S., you eat corn. Now that's not 100% accurate. And maize, I believe, was actually a Native American word for that before, for some reason, they started calling it corn in English. But also, I talked to a British guy because I was a little confused about this. And typically, if you eat it just like this, it's called corn in both places. But if you take it and you make something else out of it, like maybe tortillas or chips, or what British would say crisps, then they may call it maize, right? So, or you make a starch out of it. Americans would say cornstarch. British people might say maize starch, or maize chips, or maize tortillas. But they'll call it corn if you eat it naturally like this. Maybe just cook it. But if you make something else out of it, they might say maize instead of corn, where Americans would just say corn tortillas, corn chips, corn starch, whatever it is. Okay. In the UK, you have a number plate on your car. In the US, you have a license plate, right? That thing that identifies your car. In the UK, they say number plate. In the US, we say license plate. In the UK, you might work in the city center. In the US, you might work downtown, right? In the US, we'll say downtown. In the UK, your pants might have a zip. In the US, your pants might have a zipper, right? Zipper. In the US, we use the word zip, but that's the verb, right? To use the zipper. We'll say, I'm going to zip up my zipper. Or maybe unzip my zipper if it's already up. All right, in the UK, you might hang things with a drawing pin. In the US, you might hang things with a thumbtack. Or actually, I normally just say tack, right? Something that you could hang something on the wall with, or on a corkboard, or something. In the UK, you might get medication from a chemist. In the US, you might get medication from a pharmacist, right? We call those people pharmacists. They work at a pharmacy or a drugstore, and that's where you could go get medication. In the US, we have the word chemist, but that's usually someone who does chemistry, right? Who maybe creates the drugs, right? He knows the chemistry of them, knows how they'll interact with the chemistry of your body. We'll call that a chemist. But the person you buy your medication from in the US is a pharmacist. In the UK, you play football on a pitch. In the US, you play soccer on a what? Field, right? Soccer field. And some students guess court, right? But we wouldn't play basketball on we would play basketball on a court, but soccer on a field, football on a field, baseball on a field, but basketball on a court. All right. In the UK, a joiner works with wood. In the US, it is a carpenter. Right? A carpenter works with wood. In the UK, you might cook with mincemeat. In the US, you might cook with ground beef, right? That's what hamburgers are made out of. We'd say ground beef. Sometimes we'd say hamburger meat. And I asked a Scottish guy, which is, British. He said, I said, is it mincemeat even if it's not beef? Because you can mince other meat, right? If you want, you can do that to other meat. And he said, yeah, it's usually beef. Otherwise, you would state that it's not minced beef, it's minced pork or minced something else. So usually you just say minced meat if it's beef. But in the U.S. we say ground beef. And I guess I've never had it, but I guess you could have ground pork or ground venison, ground something else, right? But we'll always say that it's beef, ground beef, or sometimes just hamburger meat, which is going to be beef. Okay, here's a picture, right, representing chips. I should have maybe put this in earlier, right? So Americans would call the thing on the left chips, whereas British would call the thing on the right chips. And you guys, there's many more. I didn't do every single one. That's a good chunk of them, but there's a lot more that didn't make it into here. I honestly think I put too many in here. Maybe I shouldn't have put so many words in here, but that's what I did. Okay, guys, since I Mostly did just British versus American English. There's other countries that speak English, right? Yeah, maybe when you think of English, you think of the UK or the US, but there are other countries. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about the top five, mostly the other three that we didn't discuss just yet. Now, just because these are the top five that people think of, these are not the only countries where English is spoken. Uh, in South Africa, they speak English. Also, in India, they speak English. Now, in India, it's not necessarily their national language, but right, a lot of the business is done in English, and laws are written in English. And in India, there are some Indian people who only speak English. Uh, so it's not like and they also all don't speak Hindi, right? In some areas they do, in some areas they have different dialects. India is quite a confusing country, but you might be able to refer to it as an English speaking country. And there's others, there's many more. I didn't look at every single country in my culture series. If I ever get to doing those, there's more information on that. But we're just looking at what most people consider the top five. All right. So in general, Canadian English is more like American, and Australian and New Zealand English are more like the UK. But there's still some differences, and that's not 100% true. And because I mostly talked about the US and the UK, I thought I'd bring up some stuff from these other three countries. All right. Let's talk about some slang. What is a Canuck? What is a Kiwi? What is an Aussie? What is a Yankee? What is a limey? Yes, sorry, I didn't quite put 5 seconds between all of those, which I normally do when asking questions. A Canuck is a slang term for Canadians. And you'll see I misspelled that. I forgot an N in that. Uh, an Aussie is a slang term for people from Australia. A Kiwi is a New Zealander. A Limey is a British person. A Yankee is an American. And by the way, these initially weren't meant to be derogatory terms, they're just slang terms. Uh, and by the way, you might hear a British person refer to all Americans as Yanks or maybe Yankee. But in the U.S., right, in the southeastern states, they'll refer to Northerners as Yankees. So it's a little different. So maybe all British might say Americans are Yanks, but down south they might say Northerners are Yankees. And I can't tell you where all of these came from, but I do know where limey came from. Although I can't tell you the year or even the century it came about. I'm guessing maybe 18th century, maybe 19th century. I don't know. But sailors, right, would get scurvy from not having any vitamin C. And British, for some reason, they started buying a bunch of limes, whereas other nations, I don't know, had oranges or I don't know, grapefruit, whatever, whatever citrus fruit they took with them to prevent scurvy. British Navy started buying a lot of limes, and so started being referred to as limeys. The others, I can't tell you exactly how they came about. I don't know why we say Kiwi for New Zealanders. Don't have any idea. Okay, let's look at some Canadian English. A lot of these are going to be slang, really, but not all of them. So, some Canadian English. What is an ABM? What is a double double? What is a loony? What is a parkade? What are runners? An ABM is what Americans would refer to as an ATM, right? ATM stands for automatic teller machine, where you get money. Teller being someone who works at the bank, an automatic teller machine, a machine that is replacing a bank teller. But in Canada, they say ABM for bank or banking, right? The B. And that actually, to me, makes a little more sense. ABM, automatic banking machine. Yes, that makes more sense than ATM to me. But I still say ATM. That's what I'm used to. A double double is a coffee with 2 sugars and 2 creamers. Now, you guys, I looked up some of this online. I do know a couple Canadian people, but I never asked how accurate this stuff is. Some things I know, some things I looked up online. So feel free to correct me in the comments section if I'm completely off on some stuff. A loonie is a slang term for a Canadian coin because of I believe it's because of the bird on the Canadian dollar coin. A parkade is what Americans refer to as a parking lot or a parking garage, where you park your car, right? Where you uh, maybe like in a big mall and they have parking there. They might call it parkade in Canada, whereas Americans would say parking lot or parking garage. And runners are what British would refer to as trainers and what Americans would refer to as sneakers or tennis shoes. Okay, let's check out New Zealand now. And I also found out, excuse me, some of these aren't just for that country. They might also be called this in another country. So, yeah, but I believe they are called this in these countries. All right, what is a fizzy? What is a jersey? What is a Nandy? What is a plod? And what is a sarnie? A fizzy is a soda or a pop, a carbonated soft drink like Coke or Pepsi. Um, yeah, and I didn't. In the U.S., on a side note, there's different areas call those different things. But soft drinks, carbonated, sweet drink, right, is a fizzy in New Zealand. A jersey is what Americans would refer to as a sweater or sweatshirt, and what the British would refer to as a jumper. And by the way, another side note, we also have the word jersey in American English, but it doesn't mean the same thing. A Nandy is a grandfather, or I believe it's a slang term for grandfather. Plod is a slang term for a policeman, what Americans might call a cop. And sarnie, I think is slang, I'm pretty sure. It means sandwich, right? So these are all New Zealand things. And look on the right there, that's a hobbit hole, it looks like, because the Lord of the Rings films were filmed in New Zealand. All right, let's go to Australian English. Now, keep in mind, guys, I say this just as a description of the type of English. It's all the same language. There's just some differences. All right, what are lollies? What is a Sheila? What are striders? What is a billabong? And what is Vegemite? Lollies are what Americans would call candy and what British would call sweets, right? Sheila is a slang term for woman or female. And in the U.S., people used to say chick, right? In the UK, they might say bird. It's not meant to be derogatory, although, I don't know, people, there's a small percentage of people that will maybe get offended if you use these words. Okay, and striders are what Americans call pants, and British people might call trousers. Now, here's some uniquely Australian things. Vegemite is a condiment that they use in Australia. It's, let's consider it like ketchup, maybe. It made from beer curd. And to my knowledge, only Australians like it. I've never tried it. I don't know. But I've heard many stories about people who are not Australian. They tried it. They did not care for it. Uh, I'm guessing, that's because they didn't grow up eating it, right? If you grow up eating something, there's some people who don't like ketchup. They never grew up eating it. Some people who don't like mustard, they never grew up eating it. Some people who don't like mayonnaise because they never grew up eating it. It really depends on, often I think, on the type of condiments you used as a child that you get used to and you enjoy. And because it's really only popular in Australia, only Australian children are eating it, so as adults, really only Australian people like it. And I am not saying all Australians like it. And a billabong is a water hole in a dry riverbed or an oxbow bend in a river during dry season. Basically, it's a stagnant pool of water that was once part of a river and might be part of a river again. Uh, Maybe during the next wet season, right? But yeah, Billabong is basically a pool of water that once belonged to part of a river. That's a uniquely Australian word. Okay, what did you learn today? Do you have any questions? If you do, please put them in the comments. People sometimes put comments, but they never ask me questions. So I would be happy to get back to you within a day or two if you want to ask a question. Unless you wait 5 years and I'm no longer doing the channel, then maybe I won't get back to you. We'll see. All right, guys, thank you so much and have a good one. Bye.